Hi everybody. This video is an introduction to the development of sociology, and we will be focusing on several of the sociological theorists who were instrumental in the beginnings of sociology. Social theory can be defined as a sociologist's generalizations about real social interactions and the everyday practices of social life. There have always been philosophers who focus on the social world, and these had a profound influence on the particular social philosophers who set themselves apart with their inclusion in the field of sociology. But as I will explain in a little bit, sociologists are distinct from philosophers in several ways. All fields in the social sciences are shaped by their social settings, and that is particularly true of sociology, which takes the social setting as its subject matter. Our first sociologist that we will be talking about is Auguste Comte, who was alive from 1798 to 1857. Comte is best known as the person who first used the term sociology. He was also the first to put forth the idea that sociological theory should be combined with the scientific method, and those ideas tested. He believed that in order to affect social change, social theorizing and going out doing research were actually necessary. In fact, he thought that sociology would ultimately become the dominant scientific force in the world because it could uniquely examine social problems and attempt to fix them. We see here a picture of Auguste Comte and Harriet Martineau. Harriet Martineau was Auguste Comte's translator. Comte was French, and Martineau helped Comte to translate his works into English. Harriet Martineau was alive from 1802 to 1876. She is focused on in our textbook, and she is actually the only woman that we focus on in this course. And so we've got to ask why. Why is there only one woman? There were many smart women during this era, so why don't we read about them? And when we think about it, and let's turn back to her picture, when we think about it, even though there were smart women and there were even educated women at the time, there weren't very many women who had access to the kind of infrastructure that Martineau had access to as the translator of Auguste Comte. She was there, she met publishers, she met printers. She was highly educated when a lot of the other women in her era were not. And so she had the ability to have her works published. So even though there were many women during her era who um, spoke about social issues and had a lot of interesting ideas about social issues, they didn't have access to any means for having their ideas last, such as in publication. And so we don't have them. They weren't left to us. So Martineau was an early feminist, but has only recently been considered an important social thinker. Her most important work was called How to Observe Morals and Manners. As a sociologist, I don't believe it was a very important sociological work. There were many more women out there creating important stuff, but unfortunately, we don't have many traces of their work, and they are not included in textbooks like the one that we have. She's considered the first female sociologist. Our next sociologist is Herbert Spencer, alive around the same time as Harriet Martineau. He was alive from 1820 to 1903. And he's also a very important sociologist because he put his ideas together with sociological research. And so we look to his work for that. Spencer was alive during the time of Charles Darwin, when Darwin's ideas about the survival of the fittest were coming forth. And Spencer's ideas are really based on Darwin's ideas. He saw society as a living organism, and he believed that all parts of society had their own function and were interdependent on each other. So even parts of the social system that we think of as negative, such as crime or poverty, he saw as that those parts had important functions for society, and without them, our society wouldn't function in the way that it was supposed to. Spencer developed a theory called social Darwinism, which was obviously based on the work of Charles Darwin and his idea of survival of the fittest. And so Darwin applied this to the natural world, but Spencer attempted to apply Darwin's theories to the social world. What he believed was that certain aspects of the social world, including different social groups, would survive because they were stronger over other social groups, as we will learn about at the end of our course when we talk about race. He believed that some races were destined to survive while others would be lost through evolution. And of course, we have found that that is not the case. And so this was the idea of social Darwinism. Herbert Spencer, like most sociologists, was interested in the idea of the social order, which this will be a theme that you will be hearing about quite a bit today. So he believed that the social order was possible because of this idea of society as a living organism, that if we all have our functions, if all aspects of society have their functions and all the people within it have their functions, and we're all interdependent on each other, then we will all maintain our roles and social order will prevail. He also believed in the idea that social order is achieved through social consensus. Members of society agree on what would be good for everybody and then cooperate to achieve it. So his ideas really were about sort of an idealized notion about the social world that we did all agree, that we were all on a level where we would all agree, and that we would work to achieve the good for our societies. He believed that governments shouldn't interfere in the social world. He believed that because all the parts are interdependent on each other in a society, that them working in harmony will make social problems go away on their own. As we will hear about in a couple theorists from now, his ideas were strongly opposed to by Karl Marx, who we'll be hearing about in a minute. Our next theorist is probably the most important theorist that we will talk about. This is Emil Durkheim. He was a generation later than the theorist that we have heard about up till now. He was alive from 1858 to 1917. We consider him the first true sociologist, the first to apply scientific methods to social inquiry. And Emil Durkheim produced several very important pieces of social research. So again, he asks, like Spencer did, what makes social order possible? As you heard about in the other video, one of the main theoretical perspectives in sociology is called functionalism, and Durkheim, along with Comte and Spencer, are really sort of the fathers of functionalism. So they ask, what makes social order possible? According to Durkheim, social order is possible due to the moral rules that give people the shared feeling that they belong to something larger than themselves. This feeling is called the collective conscience. We, according to Durkheim, we all internalize these moral rules through the process of socialization that occurs in our families and our experiences in the social world, like in school and around our friends and people that we meet on the street. We learn these moral rules, we internalize them, and since we all know them, we have this shared feeling that we belong to something greater than ourselves. And Durkheim called this feeling the collective conscience. Durkheim let's see, let's go to this. So Durkheim came up with this dichotomy of types of solidarity, and this goes along with his idea of the collective conscience, that why do we hold together in solidarity as a culture or as a society? So he had two ideas. One was mechanical solidarity, and the other is organic solidarity. Mechanical solidarity is social cohesion that comes from the sameness of members of society. These were pre-modern people, and in pre-modern times, there was less variation in what people did with their time and what they believed in. This was pre-industrialization, before the late 18th century. And so he felt that in these pre-modern times, that social cohesion, or this feeling that of having a collective conscience, came from the sameness of what we did with our time in sociology. The other is organic solidarity, which came about in modern societies. Durkheim theorized that with more specialization and a division of labor, social cohesion is based on interdependence. Members perform different functions, which all allow for the smooth functioning of the whole. Durkheim did major studies on suicide, which you will read about in your books, on religion, on the division of labor, and many other subjects. And like I said, was one of the most important theorists that we have. And we'll come back to Durkheim again and again throughout the course. One of his concepts that was developed was the concept of anomie, which is a sense of aimlessness or despair that arises when we can no longer reasonably expect life to be predictable. Our sense of normalcy erodes because too little social regulation exists. Times when anomie would be prevalent are times like wartime, when norms go out the window and things are very chaotic, times when there are natural disasters. And the results of anomie are things like crime, chaos, not sticking with the social norms that we know, and just having to live in a different way. All right, I'm running out of time on this video. I will see you on the second one.